Before we begin the story, let us know where you're watching from by leaving a comment below. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story, everyone. The elevator doors opened on the ground floor of Manhattan's most expensive office building, and Ethan Caldwell walked straight into a camera flash that nearly blinded him. "Ethan, is it true you cheated on your fiancée with your personal assistant? Damn it, how the heck did TMZ find out about Chloe so fast?" He hadn't even officially broken up with Abigail yet. No comment. Ethan pushed through the pack of paparazzi, but they multiplied like ants at a picnic. Phone cameras pointed. Questions shouted. The marble lobby of Caldwell Financial Tower turned into a complete zoo. "Ethan, is your family disowning you?" That question made his stomach drop. The Caldwell fortune was worth $3, $2 billion. The family reputation, built over 4 generations on Wall Street, was worth more than that, and he was about to destroy it all because of one foolish night with his 4-year-old assistant. Abigail Thornton was the daughter of Caldwell Financial's biggest investor. The wedding was set for 3 months from now at the Plaza Hotel. Both families had already announced the engagement in the Times, planned the reception for 800 guests, signed merger contracts, and now those photos existed. Ethan bolted toward the exit, but more flashes exploded around him. He needed to escape now. That's when he saw her. A brunette with shoulder-length wavy hair escaping from a messy bun, black-rimmed glasses sliding down her nose, clutching a stack of legal documents, and clearly trying to navigate around the chaos. She wore a navy blazer that had seen better days and sensible flats. Perfect, normal enough to fly under the radar, but attractive enough to be believable. "Sorry, I'm about to do something crazy," Ethan whispered in her ear, sliding his arm around her waist. She spun around, brown eyes wide with shock. "What are you?" "My fiancée," Ethan announced loudly to the photographers, pulling the woman closer. "This is my real fiancée. Please respect our privacy." Her mouth fell open in complete shock. "What fiancée?" Ethan shouted to a reporter. "What about Abigail Thornton?" "Abigail and I ended things weeks ago." I was waiting for the right time to introduce Ethan, glanced at the ID badge, clipped to her blazer Lila Bennett, the love of my life. Lila Bennett blinked 3 times in rapid succession, like she was processing whether this was actually happening. The camera flashes went into overdrive. "Smile," Ethan muttered through clenched teeth, squeezing her waist gently. "Please." Lila took a deep breath and, to his amazement, smiled. Not a forced or terrified smile. A genuine one, almost amused. Like she'd decided to play along with this insanity. "How long have you two been together?" 6 months, Ethan replied without missing a beat. "We met when she came to consult on a legal matter for the firm. It was love at first sight." Lila shot him a look that clearly said, "Really, dude?" "It's true," she said, her voice steadier than Ethan expected. Very unexpected. Lila, what do you do?" "I'm a corporate lawyer," she answered, and Ethan mentally thanked his lucky stars. She wasn't completely panicking, specializing in financial compliance. Smart, good cover. "Now, if you'll excuse us," Ethan took her hand, "we have a lunch reservation waiting." They walked together toward the exit. Camera flashes exploded around them like paparazzi fireworks. Ethan felt her body trembling slightly, but she kept smiling and walking with confidence. When they finally made it to the sidewalk, Ethan waved over his driver. "Get in the car," he urged quietly. "Please, I'll explain everything." Lila stopped and stared at him. For a moment, Ethan thought she might scream at him, call him insane, run away. Instead, she asked, "What's this worth to you?" Ethan blinked. "What?" "You're obviously desperate. You just made me your fake fiancé in front of every gossip outlet in America." Lila adjusted her glasses. "How much are you willing to pay me not to tell them the truth for a second?" Ethan was speechless. Then he started laughing. "You're something else, Lila Bennett, and you're in deep trouble, Ethan Caldwell." She got into the car. "Now start talking and begin with who the heck Abigail is and why you were sleeping with your assistant." The car door slammed shut, and Ethan realized his life had just gotten infinitely more complicated. And somehow, he was looking forward to it. Ethan's penthouse overlooked the sprawling chaos of Manhattan, but Lila wasn't impressed by the view. She sat on his leather couch, arms crossed, waiting for answers while he paced back and forth like a caged tiger. "Okay, here's the truth," Ethan finally said, running his hands through his dark hair. "Abigail Thornton and I have been engaged for 2 years. Arranged engagement. Her father owns 40% of our biggest subsidiary. Arranged engagement? Lila raised an eyebrow. What is this? The 1,800 seconds. Welcome to American old money, Ethan said dryly. The Caldwells and the Thorntons have been doing business together for decades. Marriage just seals the deal. And the assistant? Ethan's jaw tightened. Chloe, 24, gorgeous, and apparently very good with a camera phone. He stopped pacing. Look, it was stupid. I was drunk, feeling trapped, and she was available. Charming. Lila stood up, smoothing her wrinkled blazer. Well, this has been educational, but I have actual work to $2 million. Lila froze with her hand on the door handle. Excuse me? $2 million. That's what I'll pay you to be my fiancée for 3 months. She turned around slowly. Are you out of your mind? Probably. But here's the thing. If this scandal breaks, it's not just about me. 3,000 people work for Caldwell Holdings. My father's heart can't handle another major stress event after his last attack. The stock price will tank, taking pension funds and retirement accounts with it. Lila studied his face. You're serious? Dead serious. 3 months. You show up to a few family dinners, some charity galas, maybe a weekend in the Hamptons. We announce a mutual breakup after the media moves on to the next scandal. And what makes you think I need $2 million? Ethan gestured toward her outfit. No offense, but that blazer has seen better days. You're carrying a canvas tote bag instead of designer leather, and your shoes are practical, not fashionable. Plus, you're working late on a Friday night in corporate compliance. Not exactly the glamorous side of law. Lila's eyes narrowed. Wow, you really are a privileged jerk, aren't you? Maybe, but I'm a privileged jerk offering you more money than you'll make in the next 10 years. She walked to his floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city lights. What about your real fiancée, Abigail? Abigail will be fine. Her family will arrange another advantageous marriage within 6 months. She'll probably thank me for getting her out of it. You don't love her. It wasn't a question, no, and she doesn't love me. We've been honest about that from the beginning. Lila was quiet for a long moment. Then I have conditions. Ethan's heart jumped. You're considering it? I'm considering not calling every gossip magazine in the city to tell them the truth. She turned around. First condition. I keep my job and my apartment. I'm not moving in here or playing house. Agreed. Second, no physical contact beyond what's necessary for photos. Hand-holding, maybe a kiss on the cheek for the cameras. That's it. Understood. Third, I get to approve any public appearances in advance. No surprise events. No springing family dinners on me at the last minute. Fair enough. Fourth, Lila's voice got serious. If this affects my career negatively in any way, if I lose clients, if my reputation suffers, if I can't get hired after this circus ends, you pay me an additional $1 million in damages. Ethan nodded slowly. You've thought this through. I'm a lawyer, Ethan. Thinking things through is what I do. She walked closer to him. And one more thing. Why me? Out of everyone in that lobby, why did you grab me? Ethan looked at her. Really looked. Her hair was escaping its bun in soft waves around her face. Her brown eyes were intelligent and challenging. She held herself with quiet confidence despite being caught in an impossible situation. Honestly, you look like someone I could trust. That's either the best compliment or the biggest mistake you've ever made. Probably both. Ethan extended his hand. So, do we have a deal, Miss Bennett? Lila stared at his hand for a long moment. $2 million would pay off her student loans, her mother's medical bills, and give her enough financial freedom to start her own practice. But more than that, she was curious. Ethan Caldwell was arrogant and privileged, but there was something genuine in his desperation, and honestly, the whole situation was kind of thrilling. One more condition, she said, not taking his hand yet. Name it. I want to meet your family first. If I'm going to pretend to be in love with you, I need to know what I'm dealing with. Ethan's smile was the first real one she'd seen from him. Sunday dinner. Caldwell family estate in Greenwich. Fair warning, they're going to eat you alive. Let them try. Lila finally shook his hand. You've got yourself a fake fiancé, Ethan Caldwell. As their hands touched, something electric passed between them. Neither of them mentioned it, but neither of them let go immediately. So, Ethan said, his voice slightly rougher than before. I guess we should probably get our story straight. I guess we should. Lila's cheeks were slightly pink. How exactly did we fall in love? Ethan's eyes darkened. I'm sure we'll think of something. Outside the penthouse windows, Manhattan glittered like a promise. And for the first time in months, Ethan Caldwell felt like he might actually be able to pull this off. He just hoped he wouldn't fall for his fake fiancée in the process. Too late. He already was. The Caldwell family estate in Greenwich looked like something out of a movie. Sprawling gardens, marble fountains, and a mansion that could house a small village. Lila stared out the passenger window of Ethan's Tesla as they drove through the iron gates. "Having second thoughts?" Ethan asked, noticing her silence. "Just calculating how many student loan payments this driveway cost." She smoothed her new navy dress, one of 3 Ethan had insisted on buying her for family appearances. "Tell me again why your family won't immediately see through this." "Because they want to see through it. My engagement to Abigail was their idea, not mine. If I'm rebelling by choosing my own bride, they'll be too busy analyzing your net worth and social connections to question the timeline." Comforting. Ethan parked in the circular driveway and turned to face her. "Look, I know this is intimidating, but just remember, you're a successful attorney who graduated summa cum laude from NYU Law. You have nothing to prove to these people." "How do you know I graduated summa cum laude?" Ethan's cheeks reddened slightly. "I may have had my assistant pull your background check yesterday." "Of course you did." Lila unbuckled her seatbelt. "What else did you learn about me, stalker?" "That you grew up in Ohio. Your father's a high school principal. Your mother's a nurse. And you've been supporting them both since you graduated law school. Also, that you volunteer at a legal aid clinic on weekends, and you've never been engaged before." Lila stared at him. "Wow, thorough. I needed to know what we were working with." Ethan got out of the car and walked around to open her door. "Your turn. What did you Google about me?" "That you're 32, Harvard Business School, been featured on Forbes's 30 under 30 list, and you've been photographed with approximately 47 different women in the past 5 years." She accepted his offered hand as she stepped out, none of whom lasted longer than 3 months. 47 seems high. "I counted." Ethan laughed despite his nerves. "Okay, we're even. Ready to meet the wolves?" "Lions. Wolves. Make up your mind about the predator metaphor." The front door opened before they could knock, revealing a woman in her 50s with perfectly coiffed silver hair and a smile that could cut glass. "Ethan, darling." She air-kissed both his cheeks. "And you must be the mysterious Lila we've been reading about." "Mother, this is Lila Bennett." "Lila, my mother, Margaret Caldwell. It's lovely to meet you, Mrs. Caldwell." Lila extended her hand, but Margaret pulled her into an unexpected hug. "Oh, please, call me Margaret. Anyone who can tame my son deserves to skip the formalities." Margaret held her at arm's length, studying her face. "You're even prettier than in the photographs. That bone structure, is that Eastern European heritage?" "German and Irish, actually. Good breeding stock." "Mother," Ethan warned. "What?" "I'm just saying she has good genes." Margaret looped her arm through Lila's. "Come. Everyone's dying to meet you. Fair warning, Ethan's sister, Olivia, is here with her husband, and she's been insufferable since the engagement photos went viral." They walked into a living room that could host a small wedding, where a dozen people were gathered around what appeared to be a drinks cart that cost more than Lila's annual salary. "Everyone," Margaret announced. "Ethan's brought his bride-to-be." A blonde woman who looked like Ethan's feminine twin rushed over, champagne flute in hand. "Lila. Finally. I'm Olivia, Ethan's infinitely more attractive sister." "Nice to meet you, Olivia. Tell me everything. How did you two meet? When did you know he was the one? Was it love at first sight, or did he have to wear you down with his minimal charm?" "Olivia," Ethan said, sliding his arm around Lila's waist. Let her breathe. But Lila was already smiling. "Actually, he was pretty persistent. I thought he was just another entitled rich boy trying to buy his way into my good graces." "And what changed your mind?" This from an older man who had to be Ethan's father. Same dark hair, same intense green eyes, same commanding presence. "He surprised me," Lila said, looking up at Ethan with an expression that was half genuine affection, half skillful acting. "He's not who I thought he was." Ethan's arm tightened around her waist, and she caught something unguarded in his expression before he looked away. "Well," Ethan's father approached, extending his hand. "I'm William Caldwell. Welcome to the family, Lila." "Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Though I should mention Ethan and I are taking things slowly. We haven't set a wedding date yet." "Smart girl," William nodded approvingly. "Ethan's always been impulsive. Good to see he's found someone with sense." "Hey," Ethan protested, but he was smiling. The next hour was a masterclass in upper-class interrogation disguised as polite conversation. Lila fielded questions about her family, how refreshing, real middle-class values, her career, corporate compliance, so practical, and her intentions with Ethan. I just want him to be happy. With the skill of a seasoned diplomat, it was Olivia who finally asked the question Lila had been dreading. So, how long did you say you two have been together? 6 months, Ethan answered quickly. Interesting. Olivia's smile was sharp. Because I had lunch with Abigail Thornton 3 weeks ago, and she mentioned that you two had just gotten back from that romantic weekend in Napa. The room went silent. Lila felt Ethan tense beside her. Olivia, Margaret said warningly. What? I'm just curious about the timeline. I mean, if Ethan and Lila have been together for 6 months, that would mean he was cheating on Abigail, which doesn't seem like our Ethan at all. Lila felt everyone's eyes on her. This was it. The moment where their whole charade could fall apart. Instead, she laughed. You know what, Olivia? You're absolutely right to question the timeline. Lila turned to face Ethan, her expression suddenly serious. I think it's time we told them the truth. Ethan's face went pale. Lila, you don't have to. No, I do. She looked around the room at all the expectant faces. The truth is, Ethan and I met 6 months ago. Yes, but we were both involved with other people. I was seeing someone in Chicago, and Ethan was with Abigail. We tried to stay away from each other. We really did. She reached for Ethan's hand. But some things are just inevitable, you know? We kept running into each other at work events, professional conferences. Every time we talked, it got harder to pretend there wasn't something there. Oh my, Margaret breathed. We finally kissed 3 weeks ago at that law firm mixer in Midtown, and Ethan broke up with Abigail the next day. Lila looked directly at Olivia. So, yes, technically there was overlap, and yes, that makes us both terrible people, but I've never felt this way about anyone before. The room was dead silent. Then, William Caldwell started clapping slowly. Brilliant, he said, beaming at Lila. Absolutely brilliant. You took a potentially damaging situation and turned it into a grand romance story. You're going to fit right into this family. Ethan stared at Lila in amazement. She just saved them both with nothing but quick thinking and a compelling narrative. I like her, Olivia declared. She's devious. I approve. As the family erupted into laughter and conversation, Ethan leaned down to whisper in Lila's ear. That was incredible. How did you— I'm a lawyer, remember? We're professionally trained liars. Remind me to never get on your bad side. Too late for that, Caldwell. I already know all your secrets. As the evening progressed, Lila found herself genuinely enjoying Ethan's family. They were sharp, funny, and surprisingly warm once you got past the intimidation factor. And Ethan was different here, less guarded, more genuine. She caught him laughing at his sister's stories, helping his mother in the kitchen, discussing business strategy with his father. It was almost easy to forget this was all pretend. Almost, because every time Ethan smiled at her like she was the most fascinating woman in the room, every time he unconsciously reached for her hand, every time he looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time, Lila felt something real stirring in her chest. Something that felt dangerously close to the real thing. And judging by the way Ethan kept looking at her when he thought no one was watching, she wasn't the only one falling for her own lie. Lila's phone buzzed at 6:47 a.m. on Monday morning with a text from Ethan. Emergency. Need you at my office now. She rolled out of bed in her tiny studio apartment, threw on the first professional outfit she could find, and caught the earliest subway to Midtown. The Caldwell Financial Tower lobby was mercifully paparazzi-free this early, though she noticed a few security guards who definitely hadn't been there last week. Ethan's assistant, a polished woman in her 30s named Sarah, was waiting by the elevator. Miss Bennett, Mr. Caldwell is in conference room 12. He's been here since 5 a.m. Sarah handed her a coffee that was exactly how she liked it. 2 sugars, splash of cream. How did you know my coffee order? Mr. Caldwell is very thorough when he wants something. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor felt longer than usual. When the doors opened, Lila could hear Ethan's voice echoing down the hallway, and he didn't sound happy. I don't care what the market analysts are saying. We're not selling the Portland division just because some tabloid printed photos of me with my assistant. Lila knocked on the conference room door and stepped inside. Ethan was standing at the head of a massive table, facing down 6 older men in expensive suits. His tie was loosened, his hair disheveled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. Gentlemen, he said without taking his eyes off them. My fiancée, Lila Bennett. The room went quiet as 6 pairs of calculating eyes turned her way, She recognized the predatory assessment. These were the board members, and they were deciding whether she was an asset or liability. "Miss Bennett," said a silver-haired man at the far end of the table. "I'm Victor Langston, chairman of the board. We were just discussing how your sudden engagement has affected our stock price." "Affected how?" Lila asked, taking the seat Ethan pulled out for her. "We've dropped 12% since those photographs surfaced," said another board member, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses. "The merger with Thornton Industries is on hold. Our largest institutional investors are concerned about stability and leadership." Ethan's jaw tightened. "The merger was contingent on my marriage to Abigail Thornton, which was always a business arrangement. Now that I've found real love." "Love?" Langston interrupted. "Doesn't pay dividends, Ethan. Your father built this company on strategic alliances, not romantic impulses." Lila felt Ethan's hand clench into a fist under the table. Without thinking, she reached over and placed her hand on his. "Mr. Langston," she said calmly, "with all due respect, I think you're looking at this backwards." Every eye in the room focused on her. Ethan squeezed her hand, whether in warning or encouragement. She couldn't tell. "Backwards? How?" Langston asked. "You're treating Ethan's personal life like a liability instead of an asset. But think about it. What's the narrative here? Young CEO breaks free from arranged marriage to follow his heart. Choose love over money. It's romantic. It's authentic. It's exactly what consumers want from their brands right now." She stood up, pulling her hand free from Ethan's and walking to the whiteboard at the front of the room. "Caldwell Financial has always been seen as old money, traditional, maybe a little stuffy." She drew a timeline on the board. "But now you have a love story. Ethan Caldwell, the reluctant prince who chose the smart, middle-class lawyer over the society princess. It's relatable. It's aspirational. You want us to turn Ethan's love life into a marketing campaign?" asked another board member, sounding scandalized. "I want you to control the narrative, instead of letting it control you." Lila turned to face them. "Right now, you're in crisis mode, defending against negative press. But what if you went on the offensive? What if Ethan's engagement to me becomes the story of Caldwell Financial's evolution? Traditional values, modern love, old money, new thinking." Ethan was staring at her like he'd never seen her before. "The Thornton merger was always risky," Lila continued. "You were essentially betting the company's future on one family alliance. But diversification is stronger than consolidation. Instead of one massive merger, why not pursue several smaller partnerships? Show investors that Caldwell Financial is agile, innovative, not dependent on any single relationship." Langston leaned back in his chair. "And you think the market will buy this love story?" "I think the market will buy confidence, and right now, you're all acting like Ethan made a mistake instead of a strategic pivot." Lila capped the marker and returned to her seat. "But that's just my opinion. I'm just the lawyer who fell in love with your CEO." The room was silent for a long moment. Then Langston started to chuckle. "Ethan, your fiancée is either brilliant or completely insane." "Both," Ethan said, his eyes never leaving Lila's face. "Definitely both. All right, Miss Bennett, you've got our attention. What exactly are you proposing?" For the next 2 hours, Lila found herself essentially running a board meeting of one of the largest financial firms in Manhattan. She outlined a comprehensive PR strategy, suggested alternative partnership opportunities, and proposed a timeline for rehabilitating Ethan's public image. By the time the board members filed out, they looked cautiously optimistic instead of panic-stricken. "We'll reconvene Thursday to discuss implementation," Langston said, shaking Lila's hand. "Ethan, you might want to put this woman on the payroll. She just saved you about $50 million in stock value." When they were alone, Ethan slumped into his chair and ran his hands through his hair. "Where did that come from?" he asked. "What?" "That, the boardroom brilliance, the strategic thinking, the way you just took control of the entire room." Ethan looked up at her. "You've been hiding your light under a bushel, haven't you?" Lila felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I told you I was good at my job." "Good, Lila. That was masterful. You just turned a corporate crisis into a growth opportunity in 2 hours." Ethan stood up and walked over to where she was gathering her notes. "Why are you wasting your talent on compliance work? It pays the bills, barely. I saw your salary in that background check." Ethan stepped closer. "You should be running your own firm. You should be the one giving CEOs advice, not filing their regulatory paperwork. Easy to say when you've got a trust fund. Is that what you think? That everything's been handed to me?" Ethan's voice got serious. "My father made me start in the mailroom when I was 16. I've worked every summer since I was 14. Yes, I had advantages. But I earned my place at this company. Lila studied his face. I didn't mean to imply I know you didn't, but I want you to know that what you did in there, that was all you. That was pure talent and intelligence and instinct. Ethan reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. You're remarkable, Lila Bennett. His touch was gentle, almost reverent. And Lila felt her heart skip. This was supposed to be fake. This was supposed to be business. So why did it feel so real? Ethan, she whispered. I know, he said, his thumb tracing along her cheekbone. I know this is supposed to be pretend, but right now, in this moment, His phone buzzed loudly, breaking the spell. Ethan stepped back, clearing his throat as he checked the message. It's Sarah. The Times wants a statement about our engagement, and page 6 is running photos from Sunday dinner with captions speculating about wedding dates. Reality crashed back in. Right. The fake engagement. Almost forgot. But Ethan was still looking at her like she was the most fascinating puzzle he'd ever encountered. Did you forget? I mean, before Lila could answer, Sarah's voice came through the intercom. Mr. Caldwell, you have the Thornton Industries call in 5 minutes, and Miss Bennett's office called. She's got a client meeting at 2. Right, Ethan said, not moving away from her. Back to reality. Back to reality. Lila echoed. But as she gathered her things to leave, she caught Ethan's reflection in the conference room window. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Part admiration, part confusion, and part something that looked dangerously like longing. At the elevator, Ethan caught her hand. Lila, wait. What? Tonight, there's a charity gala at the Metropolitan Museum. Black tie, society crowd. Exactly the kind of event we need to be seen at together. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. Will you come with me? Is this part of the arrangement? Ethan was quiet for a moment. I honestly don't know anymore. The elevator doors opened, and Lila stepped inside. As they started to close, she looked back at him. Pick me up at 7, she said. And Ethan, wear the navy tux. It brings out your eyes. The doors closed on Ethan's surprised smile, and Lila leaned against the elevator wall, her heart racing. She was in so much trouble because somewhere between the boardroom brilliance and the gentle touch on her cheek, between the fake engagement and the real attraction, Lila Bennett was falling for Ethan Caldwell, and judging by the way he'd looked at her, the feeling was mutual. But fake engagements were supposed to stay fake. That was the whole point, wasn't it? As the elevator descended toward the lobby, Lila caught sight of her reflection in the polished doors. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes bright, her lips curved in a smile she couldn't suppress. She looked like a woman in love, which was exactly what she was supposed to look like. The problem was, she was starting to think it might not be an act anymore. Lila stared at herself in the full-length mirror of the boutique dressing room, hardly recognizing the woman looking back. The midnight blue gown Ethan had insisted on buying her hugged her curves perfectly, the silk fabric flowing like liquid starlight. The neckline was elegant, but not revealing. The back dipped just low enough to be intriguing, and the color made her brown eyes look almost golden. You look absolutely stunning, said Clara. The personal shopper Ethan had somehow arranged on 4 hours' notice. Mr. Caldwell has excellent taste. He certainly spares no expense, Lila murmured, running her hands down the designer fabric. The dress probably cost more than I make in a month. He's smitten, Clara said with the confidence of someone who dressed powerful men's wives for 30 years. I've worked with Mr. Caldwell before. Previous girlfriends, family events. He's never personally called to ensure every detail was perfect. Never asked specifically about jewelry that would complement someone's eye color. Lila's heart did a little flip. He asked about my eye color? Golden brown with green flecks, he said. Wanted everything to bring them out. Clara fastened a delicate diamond necklace around Lila's neck, matching earrings, and she held up a bracelet that caught the light like captured stars. He was very specific about the bracelet. Said you have elegant hands and wanted something that would draw attention to them. Ethan had noticed her hands. When had Ethan noticed her hands? By the time Lila made it back to her apartment, she had barely an hour to do her hair and makeup. She just finished applying the last coat of mascara when her buzzer rang. Miss Bennett, your car is here. Car? Lila looked out her window to see a black town car waiting at the curb, complete with a uniformed driver, because of course, Ethan hadn't just meant he'd pick her up himself. But when she stepped outside, Ethan was leaning against the car in that navy tuxedo, and every coherent thought fled her mind. He looked like he'd stepped off the cover of GQ. The tux fit him like it had been made for his body, which it probably had. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his green eyes bright in the early evening light. When he saw her, his jaw literally dropped. "Lila," he said, his voice rough. "You look expensive?" she suggested, suddenly self-conscious. "Perfect," he finished, pushing off from the car to walk toward her. "You look absolutely perfect." He took her hand and spun her slowly, taking in the full effect of the dress. When she completed the turn, his eyes met hers, and the heat in them made her breath catch. "You're going to be the most beautiful woman at this gala," he said softly. "Ethan," she started, but he was already opening the car door for her. "After you, gorgeous." The Metropolitan Museum at night was like stepping into a fairy tale. The Great Hall was filled with Manhattan's elite, politicians, celebrities, business moguls, and socialites, all dressed in their finest champagne glasses in hand. The sound of a string quartet floated over conversations conducted in multiple languages. "Remember," Ethan murmured, as they handed their coats to the attendant, "we're madly in love. Can't keep our hands off each other. Just got engaged and can't wait to start planning the wedding." "Got it," Lila said, then nearly stumbled when Ethan's hand settled on the small of her back, right where the dress dipped lowest. His touch was warm through the thin silk, and she had to focus on not shivering. "Relax," he whispered near her ear. "You belong here as much as anyone else." Before Lila could respond, a woman with silver hair and diamonds that could fund a small country approached them. "Ethan Caldwell." "There you are, darling." She air-kissed both his cheeks. "And this must be the famous Lila I've been reading about. Mrs. Rutherford. I'd like you to meet my fiancée, Lila Bennett." "Lila, this is Beatrice Rutherford. She runs the most successful art foundation in the city. How lovely to meet you, dear." Beatrice's eyes were kind, but assessing. "I understand you're a lawyer. Corporate compliance. Mostly, though I've been doing some strategic consulting lately." "How fascinating. And where did you two meet?" Ethan's hand tightened slightly on Lila's back. "Their cue, at a legal conference last year," Lila said smoothly. "Ethan was speaking about ethical investment strategies, and I was moderating a panel on regulatory compliance. We got into this heated debate afterwards about fiduciary responsibility. It lasted 3 hours," Ethan added, smiling down at her with what looked like genuine fondness. "She completely destroyed my argument about risk assessment protocols, and I realized he was the first person who'd ever challenged me intellectually and actually listened when I pushed back," Lila said, looking up at him. The lie was getting easier to tell, probably because it contained kernels of truth. "Oh, how romantic." Beatrice clapped her hands together. "Intellectual foreplay is so much more sophisticated than physical attraction." "Well," Ethan said, his eyes darkening as they met Lila's, "we have that too." The words hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning that had nothing to do with their fake engagement. Lila felt heat pool in her stomach. "Ethan, you devil," Beatrice laughed. "Well, you must introduce her around. Everyone's dying to meet the woman who finally caught you." The next hour was a whirlwind of introductions, each conversation a carefully choreographed performance. Lila met senators and Supreme Court justices, tech billionaires and media moguls, each interaction requiring her to be charming, intelligent, and completely in love with Ethan Caldwell. The strange thing was, the last part was getting easier by the minute. Ethan was magnetic in this environment. He moved through the crowd with confidence and charm, but never arrogance. He remembered everyone's names, asked about their children and their businesses, made genuine connections, and every few minutes, his attention would return to her, a hand on her waist, a private smile, a whispered comment that made her laugh. "You're good at this," she murmured during a brief lull between conversations. "At what?" "Being human. I expected you to be more," she gestured, vaguely entitled. "Arrogant, generally awful." "Yeah, kind of." Ethan's smile was rueful. "I can be all of those things, but not tonight. Tonight, I'm with the most incredible woman in the room, and I want to be worthy of her." Lila's heart stopped. "Ethan, I know," he said quietly. "I know it's supposed to be fake, but standing here with you, watching you charm everyone you meet, seeing how brilliant and beautiful and perfect you are." He stepped closer. "It doesn't feel fake." Before Lila could respond, a familiar voice cut through the crowd. "Ethan Caldwell, you absolute snake." They turned to see Abigail Thornton approaching, resplendent in a silver gown that probably cost more than Lila's car. She was stunning, tall, blonde, patrician features that belonged on a coin, everything Lila wasn't. "Abigail," Ethan said carefully, "you look lovely. Don't." Abigail's blue eyes were ice cold. "Just don't." 3 weeks, Ethan. We were together 3 weeks ago, and now you're parading around with your little rebound like I never existed." The conversations around them were getting quieter. People were starting to notice the drama unfolding. "Abigail, perhaps we should." "Should what? Pretend this is normal? Pretend you didn't humiliate me in front of everyone we know?" Abigail's voice was rising. "Do you have any idea what people are saying about me? About us?" Lila felt Ethan tense beside her. This was spinning out of control. And fast. "Abigail," she said calmly, stepping slightly forward, "I understand you're upset, and you have every right to be. Ethan and I, what happened between us wasn't planned, but it wasn't about you either. Not about me?" Abigail's laugh was sharp. "He was engaged to me, to your father's business alliance." Lila said gently but firmly, "Not to you, and you know that as well as he does." Abigail's mouth opened, then closed. Around them, the crowd was definitely listening. "Now, Ethan made a choice," Lila continued. "Maybe it was selfish, maybe it was poorly timed, but it was honest. He could have gone through with a marriage that would have made both of you miserable for the sake of appearances. Instead, he chose to be authentic, even though it meant disappointing people and facing consequences." She reached for Ethan's hand. "I'm sorry you were hurt in the process. That wasn't what either of us wanted. But I can't be sorry that he chose love over obligation." The crowd had gone completely silent. Abigail stared at Lila for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, incredibly, her shoulders sagged slightly. "You really believe that, don't you?" Abigail said quietly. "That he chose love?" Lila looked up at Ethan, whose eyes were intense and unreadable. "Yes," she said, and realized she meant it. "I do." Abigail was quiet for another moment. Then she straightened her spine and lifted her chin. "Well," she said, her voice carrying across the silent crowd, "I suppose I can't compete with the real thing, can I?" With that, she turned and walked away, her silver gown glittering under the museum lights. The crowd slowly resumed their conversations, but Lila could feel eyes on them from every direction. Ethan's hand was shaking slightly in hers. "That was," he started, "a disaster?" "Brilliant," he finished. "You just turned a potential scandal into a love story again. It's becoming a habit." Ethan pulled her deeper into his arms. "Lila, what you said about choosing love over obligation." "Ethan, please, not here." "Then where? When?" His eyes searched hers. "Because I need to know, was that just part of the act? Or did you mean it?" Before Lila could answer, the lights dimmed, and a voice over the speaker system announced that dinner was being served. The crowd began moving toward the dining room, and the moment was lost. But as Ethan escorted her to their table, his hand warm and steady on her arm, Lila caught sight of their reflection in one of the museum's antique mirrors. They looked like a couple in love. They looked like they belonged together. And for the first time since this whole charade began, Lila wondered if maybe, just maybe, they did. Dinner was a 7-course affair at tables for 12, each course paired with wine that probably cost more than Lila's monthly rent. She found herself seated between Ethan and a tech entrepreneur who spent the entire meal trying to convince her to leave law for venture capital. "You have the strategic mind for it," he insisted over the 5th course. "Ethan told me about your performance in the boardroom this morning. Brilliant work. Ethan told you about that." Lila glanced at Ethan, who was deep in conversation with the woman to his left, but clearly listening. "Couldn't stop talking about it, actually. Said you single-handedly saved the company from a hostile takeover situation." The entrepreneur leaned closer. "If you ever decide you want to try something new, I'd love to talk to you about opportunities." As the evening wore on, Lila realized that Ethan had been subtly promoting her to every influential person they'd met. A casual mention of her legal expertise here, a story about her strategic thinking there. By the time dessert was served, she'd been offered 3 job interviews and 2 consulting contracts. "What are you doing?" she asked him during a brief break in conversation. "What do you mean?" "You're selling me to everyone here." "Why?" Ethan's expression grew serious. "Because you deserve it. Because you're wasted in your current job. And because everyone in this room should know how remarkable you are." "Ethan, I mean it, Lila. You could have anything you want. Any career. Any opportunity. You just need to believe you deserve it." The intensity in his voice made her chest tight. "And what if what I want isn't about career opportunities?" Ethan's eyes darkened. "What do you want?" The question hung between them like a challenge. Around them, conversations flowed, and wine glasses clinked. But Lila felt like they were alone in a bubble of tension and possibility. "I want," she started, then stopped. What did she want? 6 months ago, she would have said financial security, career advancement. Maybe eventually a nice man who appreciated her intelligence. Now, looking at Ethan in the flickering candlelight, she wanted something much more complicated and infinitely more dangerous. She wanted him to look at her like he was looking at her right now for the rest of her life. She wanted to wake up in his arms and fall asleep against his chest. She wanted to build something real with him, something that went beyond fake engagements and business arrangements. She wanted Ethan Caldwell to love her the way she was falling in love with him. "Lila," he prompted softly. "I want this to be real," she whispered. Ethan's breath caught. "Lila, ladies and gentlemen." The event organizer's voice interrupted over the sound system. "We're honored to have so many distinguished couples with us tonight. In particular, we'd like to recognize some of our newest engaged couples." Lila's stomach dropped as a spotlight suddenly illuminated their table. "Ethan Caldwell and Lila Bennett, would you please stand?" Ethan stood immediately, offering Lila his hand. She had no choice but to take it, her heart hammering as every eye in the room focused on them. "We understand you two have a very romantic story," the organizer continued. "Would you mind sharing how Ethan proposed?" Lila's mind went completely blank. They'd never discussed this. They'd never planned for this question. Ethan's hand squeezed hers, and she looked up to find him smiling at her with such warmth and tenderness that for a moment she forgot it was fake. "Actually," Ethan said, his voice carrying clearly across the room, "I haven't proposed yet." A ripple of surprise went through the crowd. Lila stared at Ethan in confusion. "We've been calling each other fiancés," Ethan continued. "But the truth is, I've been too nervous to actually ask the question." He turned to face her fully, still holding her hand. "Lila, you've changed everything for me. You've made me want to be a better man, a more honest man. You've shown me what real love looks like." Lila's heart stopped as Ethan reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "This isn't how I planned to do this," he said, his voice slightly rough with emotion. "But I can't wait any longer." And then Ethan Caldwell dropped to one knee in front of 800 of Manhattan's most influential people, opened the ring box to reveal a stunning vintage diamond that caught the light like a captured star, and said, "Lila Bennett, will you marry me?" The Metropolitan Museum's Great Hall had never been quieter. 800 of Manhattan's most powerful people held their collective breath as Lila stared down at Ethan, who was still on one knee with a ring box in his hands, waiting for her answer. The diamond caught the light from the chandeliers above, sending fractals of brilliance across the marble floor. It was beautiful, a vintage Art Deco setting with a center stone that had to be at least 3 carats. Surrounded by smaller diamonds that formed an intricate geometric pattern, it was exactly the kind of ring she would have chosen if she'd ever allowed herself to dream about such things, which made this moment either the most romantic thing that had ever happened to her or the cruelest joke Ethan had ever played. "Lila." Ethan's voice was soft, but in the absolute silence of the room, everyone heard it. She looked down into his green eyes, searching for some sign of what this really was. Was this part of their arrangement, an escalation of their fake engagement designed to convince the crowd? Or was this Ethan Caldwell, billionaire heir and notorious playboy, actually proposing to her Lila Bennett from Ohio, daughter of a high school principal and a nurse, who still had student loans and shopped at Target? His eyes gave nothing away except an intensity that made her knees weak. She started, then stopped. Every option seemed impossible. If she said yes and this was fake, she was digging herself deeper into a lie that was already consuming her. If she said yes and this was real, she was committing her life to a man she'd known for less than a week. If she said no, she'd humiliate Ethan in front of everyone who mattered in his professional and social world. She'd destroy whatever was real between them, and she'd walk away from the first man who'd ever made her feel like she could be extraordinary. "Yes," she whispered. The words seemed to echo in the silence. Ethan's face broke into a smile so radiant it took her breath away. He slipped the ring onto her finger with hands that trembled slightly, then stood and kissed her as the room erupted in applause. The kiss was supposed to be for show. She knew that. But the moment Ethan's lips touched hers, something ignited between them that had nothing to do with their audience. His arms came around her waist, pulling her closer, and she found herself kissing him back, with a passion that surprised them both. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the applause was thunderous. People were standing, champagne glasses raised, someone was actually crying. It was a moment straight out of a fairy tale, which made it all the more devastating when Ethan leaned down to whisper in her ear, "Thank you. That was perfect. Perfect for the show, for the arrangement, for the fake engagement that had just become a fake proposal with a very real ring." Lila's heart cracked, but she kept smiling as people surrounded them, offering congratulations and wanting to examine the ring. She answered questions about wedding plans and honeymoon destinations, and how romantic the proposal had been, all while feeling like she was watching herself from outside her body. Ethan stayed close, his arm around her waist, playing the part of the devoted fiancé. He was charming and gracious, accepting backslaps and handshakes from men who probably controlled half the economy, gracefully deflecting questions about when the wedding would be and whether they planned to have children soon. It should have felt like a victory. They'd convinced everyone. The fake engagement was now bulletproof. No one would question their relationship after witnessing that proposal. So why did Lila feel like she was drowning? "Excuse me," she murmured to the small crowd around them. "I need to powder my nose." She slipped away before Ethan could follow, making her way through the museum's halls until she found a quiet alcove near the Egyptian wing. Her hands were shaking as she pulled out her phone, staring at the screen without really seeing it. The ring on her finger caught the light, beautiful and expensive and completely fake, just like everything else about her relationship with Ethan. Lila. She looked up to find Olivia Caldwell approaching, concern evident on her face. "Are you all right? You look a little pale." "I'm fine," Lila said automatically, "just overwhelmed. It's been quite an evening." Olivia sat down beside her on the marble bench. That was some proposal. Very Ethan. Dramatic, public, impossible to ignore. She paused. Also completely unplanned. Lila's head snapped up. "What?" "Ethan doesn't do spontaneous, Lila. He plans everything down to the minute. The fact that he just proposed to you on impulse in front of half of New York society." Olivia shook her head. "That's not the brother I know. Maybe you don't know him as well as you think. Maybe. Or maybe Ethan Caldwell is finally doing something purely because his heart told him to instead of his head." Olivia's smile was knowing. "The question is, what's your heart telling you?" Before Lila could answer, Ethan appeared around the corner, his bow tie loosened and his hair slightly mussed from all the congratulatory handshakes. "There you are. I was starting to worry." He looked between Lila and Olivia. "Everything okay?" "Just girl talk," Olivia said, standing. "Congratulations, Ethan. She's perfect for you." She kissed her brother's cheek and whispered something in his ear that made him glance sharply at Lila. Before Olivia walked away, they were alone in the shadowy alcove, surrounded by ancient artifacts and the weight of history. Ethan sat down beside Lila, close enough that she could smell his cologne and feel the warmth radiating from his body. "So," he said, That happened, she agreed. "I should probably explain about the ring." Lila's stomach clenched. "Should you?" "I bought it yesterday after the board meeting. After watching you take control of that room like you were born to it." Ethan ran his hands through his hair. "I told myself it was just part of the cover story. We needed a ring for public appearances, and this one seemed appropriate." "Appropriate? But that's not why I bought it." Ethan turned to face her fully. "I bought it because when I saw it in the case, I could picture it on your hand. I could picture you wearing it for real, not for show. I could picture a future where this wasn't fake anymore." Lila's breath caught. "Ethan, I know this is crazy. I know we've only known each other for a week. I know this whole thing started as a business arrangement." Ethan's voice was rough with emotion. "But Lila, what I feel for you isn't fake. It stopped being fake the moment you walked into my office and demanded to know what this was worth to me. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life." Ethan reached for her hands. "I love your intelligence, your strength, the way you stand up to me when I'm being an arrogant jerk. I love that you see right through all the money and privilege to who I really am underneath. I love that you make me want to be better than I am." Lila felt tears prick her eyes. "You don't know me, Ethan. Not really. You know the version of me that shows up to fake family dinners and board meetings. You don't know that I ugly cry at romantic comedies and eat cereal for dinner half the time and haven't been on a real vacation in 3 years because I'm too busy paying off loans and taking care of my parents." "Then tell me," Ethan said urgently. "Tell me everything. Tell me about your ugly crying and your cereal dinners and why you became a lawyer and what makes you happy and what keeps you awake at night. Tell me all of it because I want to know. I want to know every single thing about you." "Why?" The question came out as barely a whisper. "Because I'm in love with you, Lila Bennett. Completely, irrevocably, inconveniently in love with you." Ethan's thumb brushed across her knuckles over the ring he'd placed there. "And I know it's insane, and I know it's too fast. And I know you probably think I've lost my mind. But I needed you to know. I needed to tell you before this goes any further that for me, this stopped being fake the moment I kissed you in front of those cameras." Lila stared at him, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Ethan, you don't have to say anything. I know this complicates everything. I know you signed up for a business arrangement, not this. Ethan's smile was rueful. But I had to tell you the truth. You deserve to know that when I asked you to marry me in there, I meant it. You meant it. Every word, every promise, every vow I'll make at whatever altar you choose. Ethan's eyes were intense, unwavering. I know I'm asking for everything, when I haven't earned the right to ask for anything. I know I'm probably scaring you. But Lila, if there's even a chance that you might feel something real for me. Too, Lila felt the tears spill over. Ethan, I'm terrified of me. Of this. Of how much I feel for you. Of how fast this is happening. She wiped at her cheeks with her free hand. A week ago, I was a nobody lawyer filing compliance reports and eating ramen noodles for lunch. Now I'm wearing a designer gown and a diamond ring worth more than my apartment. And the most eligible bachelor in Manhattan is telling me he loves me. It doesn't feel real. It is real, Lila. This is real. Ethan cupped her face in his hands. You're not a nobody. You never were. You're brilliant and beautiful and brave. And you deserve everything good this world has to offer, including love. Especially love. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. I don't know how to be the kind of woman who belongs in your world. You don't have to become anyone else. You're perfect exactly as you are. Ethan's voice was fierce. And it's not my world, Lila. It's our world if you want it to be. But what if I mess this up? What if I'm not enough? You're everything, Ethan said simply. You're absolutely everything. Lila looked into his eyes and saw no deception there. No calculation. No manipulation. Just love. Pure. Overwhelming. Terrifying love. I love you too, she whispered, and watched Ethan's face transform with joy. I've been falling for you since that first day, and it scares me to death because I never thought I could have this. I never thought someone like you could love someone like me. Someone like me? Ethan's laugh was incredulous. Lila, I'm the luckiest man alive that you're even considering this, that you're willing to take a chance on me. Are you sure about this? Really sure? Because if we do this, if we make this real, there's no going back. I've never been more sure of anything. Ethan's thumb brushed away her tears. I love you, Lila Bennett. Will you marry me for real this time? Lila looked down at the ring on her finger, then back up at Ethan's hopeful face. In the distance, she could hear the sounds of the gala continuing. Laughter and music and the clink of champagne glasses. The world was moving on around them. But in this moment, in this ancient alcove surrounded by artifacts from civilizations long gone, it felt like they were the only two people in the universe. Yes, she said, and this time she meant it with every fiber of her being. Yes, Ethan Caldwell. I will marry you. Ethan's kiss tasted like champagne and promises and forever. When they finally broke apart, both of them were crying and laughing at the same time. So, Lila said, wiping at his tears with her thumb, I guess we should go tell everyone the engagement is still on. Actually, Ethan said, pulling her closer, I have a better idea. What do you say we skip the rest of the gala and go somewhere we can talk about our real future, our real wedding, our real life together? Ethan Caldwell, are you suggesting we ditch your own charity gala? I'm suggesting we start our real love story. Ethan stood and offered her his hand. What do you say, future Mrs. Caldwell? Lila took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. The ring on her finger caught the light, but now, instead of feeling like a beautiful lie, it felt like a promise. I say, let's get out of here. They slipped out of the museum through a side exit, Ethan's driver waiting as if he'd somehow known they'd want to escape. As the town car pulled away from the Met, Lila curled into Ethan's side, her head on his shoulder, watching the city lights blur past the window. Where are we going? She asked. Somewhere we can be ourselves. No cameras, no audience, no performance. Ethan's arms tightened around her. Just us. Just us. Lila repeated and marveled at how perfect that sounded. 20 minutes later, they were sitting on the floor of Ethan's penthouse, still in their formal wear, but with their shoes kicked off, sharing takeout Chinese food straight from the containers and planning their actual wedding. I want something small, Lila said, twirling lo mein around her chopsticks. Family and close friends only, maybe in a garden somewhere or on the beach. Whatever you want, Ethan agreed immediately. Though I should warn you, my mother will try to turn it into a society spectacle with 500 guests and ice sculptures. Your mother actually seems lovely. Intimidating, but lovely. She'll adore you even more when she realizes this is real. She's been waiting years for me to find someone who challenges me." Ethan reached over to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. "Speaking of which, what are we going to tell everyone about the timeline? About how this whole thing really started?" Lila considered this. "The truth. Mostly. We met when you needed help with a problem. We started as a business arrangement, but we fell in love for real. Think they'll believe it? Olivia already suspects something. Your sister is scary, perceptive. She gets that from our mother. Caldwell women are dangerous that way." Ethan's smile was soft. "You'll fit right in." They talked until dawn, sharing stories from their childhoods, their dreams for the future, their fears and hopes and everything in between. By the time the sun was rising over Manhattan, Lila felt like she'd known Ethan her entire life. "I should probably go home and change," she said reluctantly. "I have to work tomorrow. Today, actually. Take the day off. Take the week off. Take the rest of your life off if you want. Marry a billionaire has its perks." Ethan Caldwell. "I am not quitting my job just because I'm marrying you. I worked too hard to get where I am. I know. It's one of the things I love most about you." Ethan pulled her closer. "But maybe consider that consulting work Sarah mentioned, or starting your own firm. You're too talented to spend your life in compliance." "We'll see," Lila said, but she was already thinking about the possibilities. With Ethan's connections and her skills, she could build something amazing. "I love you," Ethan said suddenly, like the words had just occurred to him again. "I love you too," Lila replied, and marveled at how natural it felt to say it. Later, as Ethan's driver took her back to her tiny studio apartment, Lila stared out at the city she'd called home for 5 years, but had never really belonged to. Now, with Ethan's ring on her finger and love in her heart, everything looked different, brighter, full of possibility. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Congratulations on your engagement. We'd love to feature your love story in next month's issue. Please call to discuss. Vanessa Chen, editor, New York Magazine." Lila laughed and showed the text to Ethan when he called an hour later. "Our fake engagement is about to become a very public real romance," she told him. "Good," Ethan said. "I want the whole world to know that Ethan Caldwell is completely, hopelessly, genuinely in love with Lila Bennett, and that Lila Bennett is completely, hopelessly, genuinely in love with Ethan Caldwell," she added. "Now that," Ethan said, "is the kind of story I want to tell." 6 months later, Lila walked down the aisle of a garden in the Hamptons, her father on her arm and tears of joy in her eyes. Ethan waited for her at an altar covered in white roses, looking impossibly handsome in his wedding tux, and completely overwhelmed with love. The guest list was exactly what she'd wanted. Small, intimate, filled with people who actually mattered to them. Ethan's family, her parents and brother, a handful of close friends, and Olivia as maid of honor, who had spent the entire morning saying, "I told you so," to anyone who would listen. When they exchanged vows, they were the ones they'd written themselves, full of promises about building a life together, supporting each other's dreams, and choosing love every day, even when it was difficult. "I promise to love you not because you're perfect," Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion, "but because you're perfect for me. I promise to support your ambitions, celebrate your successes, and remind you every day that you deserve all the love and happiness in the world. I promise to love you not despite your flaws," Lila replied, tears streaming down her face, "but including them, because they make you human and real and mine. I promise to challenge you when you need it, support you always, and build something beautiful with you that's ours alone." When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, their kiss tasted like forever. At the reception, during Ethan's speech, he looked directly at Lila and said, "A year ago, if someone had told me I'd meet my soulmate by accidentally grabbing her in a lobby full of paparazzi, I'd have said they were crazy. But sometimes the best things in life start with a little desperation and a lot of luck. And sometimes," Lila added, standing to join him, "fake engagements turn into real love stories." The crowd erupted in laughter and applause. And as Ethan spun Lila around the dance floor during their first dance as husband and wife, she marveled at how perfectly everything had turned out. A year later, Lila's law firm, Bennett and Associates, was featured on the cover of Forbes as one of the fastest-growing legal consultancies in the country. Ethan had stepped back from day-to-day operations at Caldwell Financial to focus on philanthropic work, using their combined influence and resources to support causes they both cared about. They bought a brownstone in the Upper West Side and adopted a rescue dog named Riley, who had absolutely no respect for expensive furniture. Lila still ugly, cried at romantic comedies. Ethan still worked too many hours, and they still sometimes ate cereal for dinner when they were too tired to cook, but they were happy, genuinely, completely, imperfectly happy. And every morning when Lila woke up with her husband's arms around her and her wedding ring catching the light, she remembered that sometimes the most beautiful love stories start with the words, "I'm about to do something crazy." Sometimes fake engagements really do turn into forever. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you fall in love with someone who sees exactly who you are and loves you not in spite of it. But because of it, Lila Bennett Caldwell was very lucky indeed. The end.